And can we find the one true image of ourselves and of where we come from that is too beautiful to capture? Welcome to Ostracon, a podcast that translates fragments into the whole from which they came. The snow is on the ground. The coming dawn is painting it a very delicate blue. And I'm thinking about two different but related questions today. The first one, what if we lived in a world that had no film and no mirrors? As it is, we live in a world where you can never really see yourself as someone else does. But what if we lived in a world where you could never even think that you saw yourself? You couldn't fix your hair in a mirror, build your confidence. You couldn't put all your experiences in an album, and your socials would tell you, look what you were doing 7 years ago today. How would it affect us? How would it change us? Would we think of ourselves less often? And does that mean we would think less of ourselves? Or paradoxically, would we think more of ourselves because we weren't subject to constant self-judgment, self-awareness? Would it remove a sort of film that covers our interactions because we're overlaying upon them the vision of our own participation in them? Would that be trained out of us? Would it never develop? Would that mean that we would have a more direct interaction with whatever moment we were living, with whatever people we were with, because that film of self-awareness had been removed? Would we be happier? Would we understand ourselves better because the way that we perceived our own identity was not filtered through the lens of the visual? And would there be an equal and opposite effect? Here's what I mean. No film, no mirrors affects the way that we perceive ourselves, maybe, and thus maybe affects the way that we go out to the world. Would it also affect the way the world comes into us? The classic contemporary example is, as you're moving through a museum, do you take a picture of the art to file away in some endless digital landscape, comforting yourself that you'll always have it to go back to, although you never do? Instead, would you just look at the art and remember the experience of the way it makes you feel? Would you remember what it taught you? Is it an alibi that we digitally catalog our experiences? It doesn't just apply to art, it can apply to being completely in any present moment. Do these ways that we live and store our experiences have as much effect on our sense of self and sense of identity as if we had never seen the way we look? If you wanted to tweak this question a little bit, you could think of music before the arrival of recording methods. Think of the time when you might only hear your favorite piece of music a handful of times in your life, when you had access to someone who could play it live. All the rest of your life, it was not the perception of the song being played. It was the song that lived in you and came out in your own life. It begs the fundamental question, who am I? Am I the way I see myself in a mirror? Am I my own curated image? Am I the relics of my own past that I store in my digital museums? Am I the difference I am making right now? Am I defined by my thoughts and actions as opposed to my appearance? Can I ever see myself accurately? And if not, then is it important not to be distracted and to focus on the work or the beauty at hand? If I cannot see myself, then do I look inward at the heart? And what would remove the film over my vision of the heart? What if we lived in a world where there were no film and no mirrors? Now, a different consideration, but one that is related. It's a consideration that seems almost completely opposite at first, but maybe it gets us to a unified whole. I'm thinking of something that a painter that I know, very talented, once told me. She teaches portraiture classes, teaches students how to sketch other people's faces. And she said, when you really stop and look at anyone, and try to sketch their face, you realize that they are more beautiful than you are able to capture. And I was so struck by what she said, because the mind has so many biases, and it has so many tendencies to dismiss peripheral information. And I started trying to take her advice by looking at the faces of people around me, strangers, and especially people that you might not take the time to study. And I felt that it was true, that if you took the time to really look at these faces and imagine them sitting for a portrait, they would be powerful. And it made me think of a related thought. Couldn't you write a biography about any person? And wouldn't it be just as good as anyone else's? I mean, we have, let me call it, a commercial tendency to write them about the famous and the infamous, because that's what people will buy, because it's something that they know. It's unlikely that anybody would buy a biography about a complete stranger. But remove that commercial distortion from the project. Every person has their promise, their struggles, their challenges, some overcome, some tragedy, losses, the unique moments that shaped them growing up, the things that first opened them up to the world, first experiences of love, of selflessness, echoes that ring back throughout their life, standards they try to meet and fail to meet, sometimes false standards that they're trapped in, their attempt to escape, their mountaintop moments of ecstasy, their lingering demons. So my second round of questions: couldn't you write a compelling biography about anybody? Isn't it true that when you look at someone's face, at their image, it is more powerful and beautiful than we can capture? How does this relate to the first round of questions? Because it felt like initially we were thinking about getting the self out of the way in order to have direct interaction with life. Now it seems like we're bringing the self back. Could it be that the lesson that emerges from these seeming contradictions has to do with the true self, the true image of the person that is unadulterated by all of these hang-ups and anxieties and judgments and categories, that is freed from worldly notions of success or failure, that is freed from pride, that is freed from the vulnerability that we feel from the passage of time and the needs physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally that we carry. This is an especially poignant consideration if you believe that the human person is made in the image of God, to come from and be destined for a love that is so real that its identity, its being, is Trinitarian, is relational? Can we move from all the things that we try to capture and cannot? Maybe all of the things that we long to capture and to hold on to and cannot. Can we move from all the false images? And can we find the one true image of ourselves and of where we come from that is too beautiful to capture?